Hi, this is Dr. Toby Mama, your host on Health and Wellness with Dr. Toby. Thank you for joining us to watch this show this week. We have a special guest on the show. His name is Dr. Abiye Iyo. He trained in Nigeria, he trained in Canada, and he's migrated to the United States. He has a bachelor's and a master's degree in biology and microbiology, and he has his PhD in microbiology from the University of Ghent in Canada. He's going to be sharing with us how he transitioned from Canada to the United States, his experience in microbiology, and what parts microbiology plays in the medical community. He's going to tell us what they do as a community in the microbiology sphere and how you and I can benefit from that knowledge base. It's going to be an interesting talk. I'm sure you've never heard anything like it. Don't miss it. We're going to talk about Ebola. We're going to talk about the flu vaccine and the flu outbreak. It's going to be an exciting time. Love to see you there. God bless you in Jesus' name. And it's not live. Hello, this is Dr. Toby Moma from Faith and Power Ministries. It's an honor to have you on our show. Thank you for tuning in. Don't touch that dial. We have a great show today with Dr. Abiye Iyo. Dr. Abiye Iyo is a consultant microbiologist. He's at the Department of Health in Mississippi, and he handles a lot of things that we're going to talk about today: bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungus, and you name it. I know a lot of you want to know a whole lot about that. And we're going to talk to Dr. Iyo about his life experience. He's a PhD holder in microbiology, trained in Canada, moved to the United States. Now he's settled here with his lovely wife and kids. And we're going to talk to him about his transition, his faith journey, and his medical experience working in the microbiology sector, in the medical sector. It's a wonderful, wonderful interview, and I don't want you to miss it. Please stay tuned. You're welcome on the show, Dr. Iyo. Real pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you
So
so
much. So let's get a little background to Dr. Iyo. Who is Dr. Iyo? Where were you born? How many years ago, if you don't mind telling my viewers your age, and how did you come to the United States?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mama. My name, as he said, is Abiye Iyo. I was born in Okrika, River State, Nigeria, and started living in Port Harcourt, River State, when I was born, and I went to school in Port Harcourt all my life. I think I did my primary school in Port Harcourt, did my secondary school in Port Harcourt, and did a bit of my college days in Port Harcourt. I have a BSc in micro from the University of Science and Technology, Port Harcourt, and then I went on to, after my 1-year stint for the National Youth Service Corps, I went back and did a master's in the same university. So I think I got an MPhil, what they call Master of Philosophy.
Nice.
So right after that, I think I stayed back there. I was employed, obviously, as a lecturer there in the Department of Biological Sciences. So I taught there for a while, and then as God would have it, I had told myself that I wanted to do a PhD, but I didn't want to do it in Nigeria. Okay, so I wanted opportunities elsewhere. So at the time, they had the Commonwealth Scholarship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so I did apply for the Commonwealth Scholarship because I had all the credentials. You had to be probably top of your class and make very high grades, So I felt I was qualified, and so I went ahead and applied. And you know, like things happen in Nigeria, a lot of guys will tell you, oh, you probably not get it. You know?
Really?
So I wasn't really looking, you know, I just said my motto is give it a shot. So I gave it a shot.
And this was in the 80s.
No, that was, let's see, no, I think it was about in the 90s.
In the 90s.
Yeah. So what happened then was I was sitting back, and then I got a letter saying you've been invited because of your application for the scholarship award, you've been invited for an interview. So I said, good, and the interview was in Lagos, Nigeria. So off I went to Lagos. You know, I had my uncle and aunties living in Lagos, so I thought, you know what, I'll just take that as a holiday. And so I went, did my interview, and I think I performed pretty well. I mean, so I came back, and I never thought anything about the interview. And
You were still lecturing at that
yeah,
time?
I was still lecturing at the
In Port Harcourt?
yeah, Port Harcourt. I think my school then is the foremost University of Science and Technology, the first of its kind.
Right.
You know, so after a while, I think, you know, when you apply for the Commonwealth, you don't just apply. There are things you do. They have like a small project that you need to write up. You know. So they ask you what you want to do and all that, why you think you want to do that, you know. So I did a little write-up, and then you are going to choose the schools that you want, you know. So obviously I went ahead and did all that. And, you know, down the road I got a letter from a graduate school, somebody from one of the graduate schools, and saying to me, we're sorry, we got an application from you, and that at this point we don't think we have any available slots because obviously you cannot pay, you know.
Wow.
So I'm like,
And those were days they didn't have emails. Was it physical letters?
yeah, physical letter, of course. You know, so I said, okay, but what's going on? I didn't physically apply to this school, so why are they writing to me saying they don't have any form of assistantship, you know? So I said, okay, and then just to answer that, maybe about a week or two later, I got a letter from the Canadian Commonwealth Organization saying you have been selected for a Canadian Commonwealth, you know, pending if we are able to get you a school.
A university.
Yeah. So I kind of added those things together, and I felt, okay, so maybe they had sent my application to the school.
To the school.
And then the school was like, well, he doesn't have any scholarship, so there's really nothing we can do. So lo and behold, maybe about a month later, I got everything. You know, so you've been awarded a Canadian Commonwealth scholarship.
And that was before Canada became so popular. Am I correct? People were, I mean, they knew about it, but it wasn't as popular.
Yeah, everybody was coming to the U.S.
To
the U.S. was then, you know, but right now it's like the attention has shifted to Canada, you know, because it's getting a lot more difficult to.
So let's go back. Tell me the background you had in Okrika. You obviously went to high school in Okrika.
No. Okay. I'll tell you something. If somebody says they are from River State, the old River State, because now they've split it into Bayelsa and River. So when somebody says they're from River State, more than likely they lived all their life in Port Harcourt. Because River State, up till now, I believe, is still a one-city state. So everybody is in Port Harcourt. So because that's where the bread and butter is.
Right.
So if you live outside of Port Harcourt, then you're probably in the village or
Okay.
something, So I went to school did my primary in Port Harcourt,
Okay.
everything in Port Harcourt. So
Now, what kind of family were you raised in? Was it your parents? Were they academically educated? Were they secondary school level, college level?
my dad obviously was educated because before he passed on, he used to be like the chief accountant for the River State House of Assembly.
Okay.
And then my mom was a caterer at the then university that I attended.
Oh.
So obviously both of them were.
Was it difficult going to college under those circumstances? Were there challenges financially, or I mean, you guys had more than one child, I'm sure. You had siblings, right?
Yeah.
So was there any financial competition to keep all of you in school simultaneously?
No, I believe those were the good old days in Nigeria, where going to school didn't really mean much. Like you didn't need a lot of money to go to school. Because I remember when I was in college, then you needed maybe about, for lack of a better translation, I'll say 50 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. 50 cents for a lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, during my days in college, River State indigents were given scholarships. And the scholarship was like about 600 naira. And I'll tell you one thing, 600 naira then could buy you a used car.
Oh, wow.
So that's how big the money was,
Right.
So in terms of going to school, and it's more like a communal system where we have aunties, uncles, and all that. So you go visit your auntie or uncle, you're living, they give you some money, and I'm the kind of person who I don't spend money just for spending, So when I get monies like that, I just save them.
So tell me, in terms of your faith life, when you were in high school, you gave your life to Jesus, or was it when you were in college?
That was when I was in college.
Okay.
At the I would say, coming from Mississippi now, I would liken my growing up to like living in Mississippi, okay? So obviously Mississippi is the Bible Belt of the nation. And so one way or the other, you get dragged to church.
Gospel, right.
So your parents or your aunties, uncles. So growing up, Sundays, we always went to church, but then would you consider yourself a Christian because you just went to church?
Right.
Obviously, the answer will be no. And so it wasn't until I got into college. I mean, you hear the gospel being preached, you'll be sleeping in the morning, you hear somebody going around, with a megaphone preaching and all that, Sometimes you hear they have open air crusades, whether you liked it or not.
The gospel will
you would hear it, So there was no barrier to saying, okay, you can't do this or you can't do that. So every little opportunity people got, you hop in the bus, by the time you move, somebody's getting up and preaching. So it was like you were inundated with the gospel wherever you went. And that's how it was. But then did it sink in? Probably half of it went in and the rest until, you actually have a personal relationship,
Relationship.
you know,
Right.
then you understand what these guys were talking about.
Okay. So your parents, were they churchgoers or were they Christians growing up? Because I know there's some homes where it's just, routine church services.
Yeah, I would say my dad for one, didn't go to church with us.
Okay.
Okay, it was just my mom. So I would say yes, my mom was a Christian. But for my dad, I can't,
Of course.
Once in a while, he'll chip in something, but then
Okay.
I
Right.
can't say.
So what was the encounter you had in college that turned your faith life around? And we're building this up to you coming to Canada and getting your PhD, which I know a lot of my viewers are very interested in because less than 4% of Americans get a PhD. And for Dr. Iyo, it's a feat that I think some of my viewers are like, oh wow, how can I ever achieve that? So just give us the background. What happened in college that became a life turning point for you?
Well, it wasn't. You see a lot of people come to know the Lord, and it's kind of a dramatic experience.
Hmm.
For me, it wasn't. It was just a normal, and it was kind of normal. I was on the college campus, and they had like Christian unions and
Right.
all that, and every once in a while they have events,
Events,
open air
right.
crusades, and I remember vividly this particular. I forget I think they called it. The theme was transformation.
Okay.
Okay, and I think it was right out of the book of Romans. I think chapter 12, where
Okay.
it
Yeah.
says, "Be ye
Transformed.
transformed." So they just coined it transformation. And so to me, I wasn't going. I didn't initially go out. I was just passing through the crusade ground. And for a moment, I'm like, okay, maybe just stand and listen to what they're saying.
Mm.
So I stood there, and right after they finished, they had an altar call.
Mm.
And what I remembered was I wasn't really going for myself
Mm.
because in my family, I think you had a lot of people who were alcoholics and all that, and things were pretty bad for them and all that. And I said to myself, well, if I'll go up, God, if you would save these individuals from
Oh.
destruction by
Mm-hmm.
alcohol. So to me, then I just felt, well, I didn't have any issues, I didn't have any problems, right? So I was going on behalf of others.
Others, right.
And then I went up, and they prayed for me. And then, I had somebody who tagged along and was kind of a mentor and
Mm.
all that. And that was how it
You
started with
got
me.
okay.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. What did your sisters and brothers think? I mean, were they? Well, how many brothers and sisters do you have? Number one, and then was there a faith link in your family with your brothers and sisters?
The other thing I would mention up front here is that I am from a polygamous family.
So my audience may not understand that, so you might have to explain.
So when you say polygamous, it simply means that your dad married your mom, and then maybe they split, and then he married somebody else. And so um, when I was born, actually, I'm the only son of my mom for my dad. Okay, and right after that, I think they split, and then he married my stepmom.
Mm.
Okay, so my stepmom had two daughters,
Okay.
and my mom has two daughters and two sons.
Okay.
So when you add, it's like I'm kind of
So we call
pitched.
it a blended family in America. Kind of.
Yeah, so I'm
Kind
pitched in
of,
the
yeah.
middle. So
Okay.
I'm kind of the one who pulls
Oh,
everybody together. So my sisters on my dad's side, both of them from high school, well, Christians, and
okay.
they've maintained that to
Mm,
date. And then, of course, like I said earlier on, we would be considered the Bible Belt of Nigeria.
Nigeria.
So
Right.
everybody thinks they're
Mm-hmm. That
Christians.
Christian,
You
right.
know. So really, when you say you're a Christian, people don't see you
Mm. What
differently.
was it like growing up in that home where, your father had married another wife? Because there are audience people watching who are saying, I'm in a single parent home. I can't seem to achieve my potential because I was in a single parent family, and I think it's going to limit me for the rest of my life. What can you tell that young man or young woman in that respect?
I don't know what to tell this person, but I would want to thank God for the the woman that I lived with as my stepmom,
Okay.
because why I say that is that if you're from Nigeria, for instance, and they talk about stepmothers,
Mm,
stepmothers are supposed to be pretty wicked. They're brutal. You know, if you're from another woman living with them in the same house, they'll almost kill you. And then the other thing we have to understand also is that Nigeria operates more from um, how would I put it? I can't get the word right now, but it's a male-dominated
right.
society, and so if a woman is married and they have all girls, they feel like the whole world is caving in on them, and so when they get a male child, it's like wow, God has blessed them. So here I was living with my stepmom. She had all girls, and I was the only guy. So
Oh,
this meant that, let's say, if my dad passed on, everything would belong to me. Okay?
okay.
So with that mindset, you would think this woman would really ill treat you,
Oh my God.
but she didn't.
She did it.
She was
Right.
the sweetest woman,
Oh,
you know, in the whole wide world.
wow.
So she took care of me like her own.
Wow.
And so, with that love and care, I never lacked anything,
Hmm.
So
So you didn't feel ostracized or
not at all.
disenfranchised or
Not
okay.
at all. She was like the best,
Wow.
so
So if you're in a blended family, it doesn't mean it's the end of the road. You can make it in life if you give that woman who's not your biological mother an opportunity to
yeah,
be a part of your life.
yeah, I think it takes two to tango,
Hmm.
So I understand that, stepmothers could be pretty bad and all that, but at the same time, if you are bad,
Hmm.
then it might give her the opportunity to, you know, kind of
Retire, maybe.
retaliate or do something to you, but in my own case,
So you've held a lot of leadership positions in the Christian faith, African Christian Fellowship leader, in your local church leader. So you gave your life to Jesus in the 90s. What progressive transformation? What happened? And we'll get to the PhD part, but spiritually speaking, did your did your spiritual life increase in Canada, in Nigeria, in America? did you see God doing greater things as you traveled, or was it in Nigeria that your spiritual life was consolidated? I mean, in terms of your knowledge of the Bible, in terms of your comfort with, you know, letting others know about Jesus, in terms of being a witness for Christ in general.
I would say mine is more like an upward. It's not, there wasn't any particular time that I said, okay, I know it all now.
Right.
So as I grew older, so also I grew in the knowledge and things of God. So it wasn't a
Okay.
one-time.
Was Canada supportive? Because some people feel the Western world is not supportive of Christian values. So I was just curious, comparing Nigeria with Canada. We'll come to America later. Was it supportive as a PhD student? And we'll talk about that later. But was the environment supportive for your Christian beliefs?
As much as you would want it,
Okay.
I think it is supportive. And I believe sometimes Africans and people from the West, we tend to look at Christianity in terms of our cultures. Okay, so somebody who's a Christian in Nigeria might view things differently from a Christian here. You know, and I know all of us believe the same Bible, we, you know, believe in the same Lord and Savior, but culture has a way of, one culture I can tell you, for instance, I mean, before now, in Nigeria, for instance, certain churches wouldn't allow women to wear pants. Whereas in the US or Canada, it's like, it's not a big deal. And I grew up, you know, with the idea that when you go to church, and I'm sure it's probably it used to be the same here in the good old days, that when you went to church, you dressed in your best clothes, you know. But you come here, I've seen people wear shorts to church and all that. So, you know, to me, all that is cultural.
It's cultural, okay.
So I'm not going to hold somebody here,
Accountable to what
you know.
Yeah.
So if, I mean, I tend to flow with, you know, it says when you go to Rome, you behave like the Romans,
right.
you know. So long as what I'm doing doesn't really, it's not against my faith, it doesn't cause anybody to
lose their belief in Jesus.
Yeah.
We're going to come back. We've just run out of time. Dr. Iyo is just about to pour out his heart. We're going to finish up next week on his trials, his trips, his transition to United States of America. You're going to be blessed by this sharing Dr. Iyo Abiye has for us. Don't miss the show. Don't miss the show next week. Look forward to seeing you. God bless you. This is Dr.